FNAF World is still seen as one of the big failures of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. This game was so hated that it was removed from all stores and had to be re-released for free. How can a game so hated be good? Well, let's start from the beginning. On July 23rd of 2015, the very successful fourth installment of the Five Nights at Freddy's series was released. Many of the fans believed this to be the final FNAF game ever made. Even though most players knew that this game was a prequel, the way that it crafted its very sad story before ending it in an arguably even sadder way, with the death of this child being seen throughout the game in Easter eggs, this was seen to be the final game in the FNAF series. And well, I mean, it was also called the final chapter, so that would probably help. On September 9th of 2015, however, an image was uploaded to Scott Games. A thank you message containing many of the series' beloved characters all gathered together. But slowly, over time, the image would change. First, the endoskeleton behind Toy Freddy, then the next endoskeleton, then a small golden Freddy shows up, then Withered Chica, JJ, Balloon Boy, Foxy, Mangle, Toy Bonnie, Phantom Foxy, Toy Chica, Toy Foxy, Withered Bonnie, a plush endoskeleton, and then the text changed. The thank you message finally changes into FNAF World. The background becomes brighter and brighter with every single animatronic here either disappearing or becoming the adventure version of themselves. And then finally, October 15th, 2015, a trailer was released. It showed the heads of every character from FNAF 1 as it would zoom into the eye and pop up with some text before transitioning into showing some gameplay. This trailer would show the exploration, the battles, and a text pop-up for 39 of its 48 total characters. A new website would be made called FNAFworld.com for all of the FNAF World related teasers, as it was clearly a different style of game from the rest of the series. Soon, the newly created FNAFworld.com was edited to say that hackers had apparently gotten the files to FNAF World, but this just ended up being a Halloween troll game. But through everything, the game was said to be released on October 28th, 2015, and so it was. Released on October 30th of 2015. It ended up being delayed by 2 days, which was a new situation for FNAF fans, but a 2-day delay is a very short delay within the span of video game releases. When the game came out, it was exactly what was promised, and a lot of people didn't like that. Going from a very horror-heavy series to a much more civil and Pokemon-esque game is a big change, especially after the years that this series has established its presence in the horror community. A lot of people disliked this change, and I don't blame them, but I enjoyed it. Some of you may be thinking that I'm being inconsistent considering I disliked Security Breach for similar reasons, but there is a big difference. Security Breach was presented to be a horror game like its predecessors, but FNAF World was presented as different in every possible way. It showed exactly what it was in the trailers, even mentioning that it's no longer scary but cute. There was so much of an effort to show that this game is different that a new website was made just for FNAF World information. This game never tried to be like the games before it because it knew it was different, so it presented itself that way. Security Breach, on the other hand, presented itself to be so much like the other games that they remixed Crumbling Dreams, or Ballora's music box song, from Sister Location in the trailer. Just take a listen to Crumbling Dreams. Now take a listen to the song in the trailer. While I love this remix, Security Breach was presented to be like the other games, but it wasn't. FNAF World knew what it was and presented itself exactly the same way. Now, even with the differences in game style, this FNAF game contained many elements of the former games that were to be discovered, which allowed for very unnerving moments in this cute game. When talking to Fredbear, if you decide not to leave after he has spoken his last line, the game would go very pixelated and Fredbear would completely freak out. He would say that you don't believe what's really going on here, he tries to show you the truth of the situation, and begins talking about clocks. Even though this game was never presented to have any elements of the previous games, if you looked for it or accidentally stumbled upon it, the game would end up achieving a level of unease and story-driven elements just like the other games in this series. Of course, it's not going to be as intense as jump scare after jump scare like these previous installments, but this game had elements of the unsettling story of FNAF. The more you think and the more you explore, the weirder it gets. This was never promised, but added as a huge bonus to this game. Even though this game had these elements of these other games in it, it also established its way to a larger audience than the rest of the games. Those who weren't necessarily in love with the horror side of FNAF, but enjoyed the characters, can now play a game without worrying about the jump scares and the normal FNAF-y elements. And within all of that, it can maintain its creepy and terrifying story feel for the normal FNAF players. This game somehow combines the cute and lovable aspect of these RPGs like Pokemon that have cute characters like Pichu, Mew, and Piplup by having this adventure Foxy or even this adorable adventure Mangle. Look at its little bolo bat. FNAF World was able to take these elements and attract a certain group and combine it with the normal weird elements and story additions that the normal FNAF fans loved in this very easy to digest game, allowing both of these communities to have a collective game even if it wasn't received well by a majority of the common FNAF players. I mentioned in this last section that this game was very easy to digest, and let's talk about that for a bit. The previous games were a point-and-click style, each containing their own rules and strategies. The first game had doors and lights, the second game had lights, masks, and the music box, the third game had speaker systems, ventilation, restarting systems, and only one animatronic, and the fourth game had breathing, 3 doors, a bed, lights, and animatronic waves. FNAF World, however, had very similar controls and feel to other RPGs like the long-reigning Pokemon games. You would walk around using the very commonly utilized WASD controls, with all menu selections being very clear in large text with clear button borders. Many people are very familiar with these styles of games, which makes it very easy for people to understand. Sadly, there is no tutorial for this game, so you have to be able to understand what is happening while in your first fight, and if you can't figure it out, you'll be left in the dust. The game is also very unclear with its instructions sometimes, which will require you to look up tutorials, but if you're looking for a casual RPG to play and have fun with while being able to play as the characters you love, FNAF World is a very good option. When you get towards the end game of FNAF World, there are many secrets and endings. In fact, there are a total of 8 different endings. There's the normal mode ending for casual playthroughs, the hard mode ending where you fight Anim Dude, there's the 4th glitch ending where you can fly too close to the sun and decide not to listen to Fredbear's warnings, and go into the 4th glitch where you come face to face with Old Man Consequences, where you can also choose to get the drowning ending by drowning yourself in the lake in front of you. The Universe End ending, which even if it contains story-driven elements, is a very comedic ending in itself, where if you play as Fredbear and talk to Fredbear, both Fredbears will explode like a cannot compute scene in a sci-fi movie. There's the Chipper's Revenge ending, which creates a cameo for a previous video game that isn't related to the main FNAF series at this point, and allows you to do a very difficult and intense boss fight. If you are a very committed player, you can choose to solve all of the puzzles and obtain all of the clocks in the game, and you get a very interesting ending. The final ending was added with the Halloween update, where you do another insanely difficult mission and win the final Chica's Magic Rainbow fight, and you get a very interesting cutscene. This game has many different routes that you can choose to do depending on the player that you are. Some of these endings are easy, and some of them are insanely difficult. You choose how difficult of an ending you would like to achieve. Now, let's discuss the cutscene for the Chica's Magic Rainbow ending. I mentioned earlier in this video that this game connects with the normal FNAF story. Once completing the game, you are led back to a house where a sad Fredbear will tell you that a man has gone insane. You are suggested to quit the game, but if you continue this game and complete all these Halloween mini-games, once you defeat the final Chica's Magic Rainbow boss, you are directed back to the house where you see Yellow Eyes with one of the only voice lines in this game for a brand new baby character, and the lights turn on to see Desk Man that was seen previously in the game, dead at his desk, bleeding as the screen fades to black with the words "to be continued" until the game is finally complete. Even though this game is very different from the other FNAF games, it includes many of the loved story elements from these other games, including dead bodies and introducing a character that is one of the most important in the entire FNAF franchise. A huge benefit of this game came from its music. FNAF World is among the first FNAF games to have original music created by Leon Riskin. The music complements the situation very well. It has a calm and mellow feel when walking around the map, which is a calm and mellow situation. Fredbear is a very cheery dialogue-based character, so his bouncy theme fits very well with this bouncy character. But this game isn't just good at the cheery side of music. When battling, you have a similar style of song as the rest, but it's more chaotic to match the energy of the fights. But just like how this game can create the upbeat feel, it can also create a good sense of unease, such as this battle theme for the glitched world, which is inverted. Or even when you're exploring the funhouse, the music creates another sense of unease in this situation. If the music wasn't presented here, this location wouldn't feel weird, but this music adds that factor that can't be visually represented. But once again, this game isn't just good at calm and uneasy music. This final boss theme is one of the greatest songs in the game. It creates the intense and epic feel that should be present for the final boss of any game. This game's music, just like its advertisement, knew exactly what this game was and complemented it perfectly, making the game feel a lot more polished than FNAF has ever felt before. Music was never a big part of the other FNAF games, but when it was, it only felt like it was there to mark the start and end of the game, which were the only locations for it, but the music in FNAF World, even at the start and end, had the same feel as the current situation in the game, creating a much more polished feel. Now, after all this talk about the good in FNAF World, this game is definitely not perfect. There are a lot of arguments and reasoning for people who dislike FNAF World. One of the biggest reasons was that FNAF World, just like Security Breach, was released too early and was incomplete. This is very true. FNAF World's original map was this 8-bit style, while its fight sequences were in 3D, which was a very jarring swap that felt like visual whiplash. The structures don't feel like they fit into the environment, and that's because there are no shadows on them. Not only that, but the perspective with these structures is also non-existent. You have Lolbit over here at the beginning of the map, and you can't tell whether Lolbit is meant to be under or in front of this building. Not only that, but like I mentioned before, this game didn't have a tutorial. Overall, I completely agree that this game was released way too early, and to this day feels unfinished. Just like Security Breach, FNAF World updates began coming out to fix many of the problems of this, however. But a large number of people hated this game so much that the third update and mobile ports were canceled, and it was taken down from all stores before being re-uploaded to GameJolt for free. In fact, this game was hated so much that the original trailer was removed. The final version of FNAF World was never released, so we can never really know how these things would have changed, which creates the judgment in these aspects of the game much harder. Another problem many people had with this game is that the story is very unclear. From face value, it seems to be about beating up your friends until they agree with you. It's very cryptic, but sometimes to a fault. The constant rambling of clocks and insertion of Animdude creates a very unclear path for many of these story elements. One of the biggest cons in this game is the graphics. During the fight scenes and the title card, the game is very bright, but that's not too bad. There's a lot happening, but there's a very clear task and consistency. During the segments when you are moving around the map, however, it's a completely different feel. Some maps are a lot darker, and the transition from a dark map to a bright fight is instant, which is very jarring on the eyes. If the entire game was this bright and colorful feel that is present in the fights and minigames, there would be a consistently that could be easily gotten used to. But because of the vast differences in these two aesthetics, it makes getting used to this graphic style a lot more difficult than it should. Many people didn't like this game because it wasn't a normal FNAF game. And while you can say that it isn't your cup of tea, FNAF World was never presented to be a normal FNAF game, so it can't be judged as such. It knew what it was and never presented itself differently. While the graphics, story, and incomplete release were definitely to a fault, the music matched perfectly, the trailers and teasers showed exactly what it was, the game was very easy to pick up, it appealed to a wider audience than any other FNAF game, it introduced one of the most vital characters into the series, and it had multiple different skill levels. Let me know your opinion in the comments, but this is why I think that FNAF World is a good game.